With chicken, to brine or not to brine is not the question. Experts like Malcolm Reed say wet brine. Make a brine in water. Overnight the chicken is in and you're gonna have the best chicken. And other experts that I have huge respect for, every time dry brine, that produces the best chicken. So if you know me, you know I gotta find out. Let's do a test today. So I started this a couple hours ago in the almost 100-degree North Carolina heat. Let's go back to then and I'll show you how I developed the flavor profiles for what's gonna be this test. Whether we wet brine or dry brine, we're gonna use the same flavor profile. So let's start putting together a basic rub for chicken. So we're gonna do 3 parts of paprika, 2 parts of brown sugar or golden monk fruit sweetener if you're keto, and then 1 part each of granulated garlic. Don't use garlic powder. If you can get granulated garlic, do it. It works better for a rub when it's about the same granule size. Also granulated onion and a thick mesh ground black pepper. Just for a little extra flavor, we're gonna just do a dash of ancho chili powder just to get a little bit more flavor in there. And now I'm gonna mix this as evenly as I can, and I'm getting that nice kind of burnt orange color as this mixes that you're used to seeing in poultry rubs. All right, so I've got an empty spice container and I'm gonna put my dry rub in here. There we go. It says paprika, but it's our poultry rub. Now you'll notice there's one ingredient that's in every barbecue rub that I did not put in my rub. If you've been here before, you know why, but that's salt. So I like to salt separately. So we're gonna put salt in our wet brine and we're gonna salt our chicken separately from the flavor that we create. So let's go get our wet brine set up now. A wet brine is really simple. We're gonna start with a gallon of water. For 1 gallon of water, we're gonna use 1 cup of Morton's kosher salt, and we're gonna use 1 cup of our dry rub. I like putting my dry rub right in my wet brine. It allows the flavors to get all the way into the meat. And now we're just gonna bring this up to a boil. That boil is going to dissolve the salt and the spices into the water and also kill off any bacteria because we're going to be putting poultry in here overnight. So let's get this cooking. Be right back. All right, so you can see we've reached a boil now. I'm going to go ahead and cut the heat off. All right, so now that we've dissolved this all and purified it, we need to cool it off. So I'm just going to put ice in and stir this ice, and I'm gonna keep adding ice and stirring until I get this wet brine down below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And the reason is we are worried about food safety here. We're gonna be putting one of those chickens in this brine, and we wanna make sure that we're not taking that chicken above 40 degrees and having it stay there for an extended period of time, even in the fridge, where it's gonna partially cook and bacteria is gonna develop. So we're gonna keep adding ice and bring this down, and then I'll be right back. So now that we have flavor profiles built and we've got our wet brine ready, this between ice and everything else is now about 38 degrees. So we've got food safe temperature. We're gonna drop one of our birds right into the brine. Now what's gonna happen is overnight, the salt and all of these flavors are gonna absorb into the skin, into the meat. It's gonna be infused. It's kind of like a marinade, but based on salt. So this is gonna go in the refrigerator and we're gonna pull it out tomorrow. So for our dry brine bird, we're gonna start with salt, but we're gonna put our rub on so that it's got the same opportunity to get flavor as the one that is wet brining, so that water is really the thing that's isolating. So I'm gonna start with salt just on the surface of this side, and then I'll flip it over and we'll salt this side. And because I don't know how much salt's gonna get through the skin, I'm actually gonna drop a little bit of salt inside as well, and that should make a difference for the meat. All right, so we're gonna put a little bit of our rub right into the cavity, and then starting on the bottom, and we'll flip this over, get the top, get the sides. All right, so this is gonna go in the same refrigerator overnight for the same period of time. And then tomorrow we get to cook these for dinner, or at least for me, it'll be tomorrow. For you, it'll be like that. See, told you guys that'd be quick. Big difference, wet brine is wet. On a serious note, we've got the same things. We got salt and our rub. We got salt on here and our rub. but now we've got a wet chicken. So we don't want it to be soaking wet. We still want a little moisture just so that our seasonings will stick to it. We could use a binder like duck fat spray, but I don't want to sour the results by having one flavor on one and not on the other. So I'm just gonna use paper towels here, including out of the cavity. And now we're gonna put the same rub on here, and we'll do a little touch up on there as well while we're at it. Sticking just fine with the moisture that's left from the wet brine. And I'll just touch up a little bit over here. Now I do want this skin to be able to dry out a little bit, so I'm gonna put these in the refrigerator just long enough to get the grill up to temperature. Today we're cooking on General Skywalker here. General Skywalker is my custom Santa Maria grill from Rocket Grills. So if you've seen me cook on a Santa Maria or others, you know that we control temperature by raising and lowering the grate here. But we're gonna actually be raising the grate all the way today because we have a rotisserie motor here that we're gonna use to make rotisserie chicken over an open fire. So we've got this set up with a typical log cabin to get it started. And you notice I've got a couple of splits over here. I don't know if we're gonna need them because I don't think it's gonna cook that long, but just in case, we're gonna get these nice and warm. So if we have to put them on, we'll be able to keep nice, clean smoke. So we have this area over here called a bracera where we can actually pre-cook wood and burn it down into charcoal. But I think this is gonna be a short enough cook that we're not gonna need the bracera. So let's get it lit. Bring me 4 fried chickens and a Coke. 1 hour in the refrigerator and you can see a big difference here. So this is the wet brine chicken. You can see the water from the brine is starting to come through. It's still very plump. It's got all that water in there. And the dry brine chicken is smaller by comparison and doesn't have any of those wet spots. So my theory, we're gonna see if I'm right, is that this one's actually gonna take longer to cook because we're gonna have to cook all that excess water out. So the first step is gonna be to truss the birds. So trussing the birds just means I'm tying them up so that when they're on the rotisserie, they're not just flopping around out there. You can buy trussing kits. I don't think you need to. I just take butcher's twine, I come around the legs, I cross, I come underneath the wings. We gotta hold those wings together because they're gonna be the worst culprits at flying around. We pull it back and we come right above the tush, over once, over twice into a butcher's knot. We pull it tight and we see how it plumps up the bird, and it's gonna hold the legs and it's gonna hold the wings together, and then we tie it off, right? One nicely trussed bird. All right, this is a giant rotisserie. This thing is actually meant to do like a whole hog or a lamb on the Santa Maria, but we're gonna be using it for a chicken, so hopefully these things aren't too big. We start by putting the first fork on. We come through the cavity and out this side, and then we're gonna put another fork on. Now, the reason that we're using 2 forks per chicken instead of just putting 1 fork on each side is because I think there's a chance I'm gonna have to pull this one off sooner because I think it's gonna get done faster. But again, that was just a theory. So now I'll put this fork on, come through the same way, come out the other side, and a final fork. So we want these two to be roughly in the middle, which they are. So I'll tighten these down, then I'll push our birds towards the middle, then the outer forks come in to hold them. Now, to keep track of the cook, we're gonna be using meter wireless thermometers. So we can't use the thermometers we use on a lot of grills because they got wires, but the meter is actually gonna work Bluetooth to the block, connect to my phone, and it'll help me keep track of the cook. So I wanna go right into the breast, getting right to about the middle of the meat. That's gonna be number 1, and this one's gonna be number 2. All right, so let me just touch up the rub on both birds. All right, let's go get these things on the fire. All right, so now that we've got the chickens going, we can position our fire right underneath the chickens. And now our coals are right under our chickens. And as the chickens start to drip fat, we should get the benefit of that fat hitting the coals, and oh, that's gonna taste so good. All right, so now we're gonna set up our cooks. We're cooking poultry, chicken, a whole chicken to 165. That's exactly right. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other one. Set it up to cook a chicken to 165. All right, and now they cook. All right, so we're an hour and 10 minutes into our cook, and we've got about an hour and 10 minutes left. And my theory about the water making a big difference does not appear to be proving true. So our dry brine bird that's over here is 121 degrees, and our wet brine bird is 116 degrees. And that's really close given just the difference in temperature one side to the other. They're actually projected to be done within 6 minutes of each other. I think that theory's gone, but I think we're gonna have good looking chicken. You can see the dry brine ones taking a little bit of char. That could just be flame kissed. I don't know. I'm excited I get to eat both of them, but I'll be back in an hour when they're done. Okay, the dry brine bird is 5 minutes from done, and the wet brine bird is 8 minutes from done. So I'm gonna say that theory is debunked. As soon as these things hit 165, I'm pulling them off the fire. Just to make it easier, since the dry is gonna be done earlier, I'm just gonna move the fire over so it's under the wet brine for the couple of minutes. And then I'll meet you over at the island to taste. 2 hours and 45 minutes later, and they finished within like 3 minutes of each other. Like, I had to do some fire management. I had to keep the fire going under both of them. I maybe should have used the braziera, but I can say no difference in the cook. Like, they look almost identical. There's a little bit more char on the dry brine one over here, but that's probably just because it had a little bit more time with flame kissing it. Let's see, can we hear it? Sounds like crispy skin. They both sound like crispy skin. I don't hear a difference. By the way, shout out to my friends at Meter. Yes, they're a sponsor of the channel. What a difference. Can you imagine me having to constantly stick a meat thermometer in to see how well these are doing? Like, it told me when it was time to pull, when it was time to rest, when it's time to serve. And so even though I know what I'm doing, I love having tools like that. Nick, which one should I cut and do first? Leo always says that the second one I taste is the best one. So I'm not gonna decide in advance, so that way nobody can say this is rigged. Which one do you want me to taste?
Let's taste the dry brine first.
The dry brine first. Okay, and do you have a prediction, Nick, as to which one you think is gonna taste better?
My official prediction is the wet brine is going to taste better.
All right.
I think that those flavors are gonna have soaked in a little bit more. So let's see.
All right, so the dry brine. All right. It's juicy. All right, Nick, you gonna taste with me?
Absolutely.
Here's the dry brine. Here's a piece of skin for you. Delicious, not crispy.
Not crispy, super
Which is
juicy.
really a surprise, super juicy, but I think the concept basting. All right, ready for a piece of breast? Here, can you see how juicy this thing is? I mean, that's a good chicken. Not smoked, grilled, definitely grilled flavor. What do you think? Dry brine?
Delicious.
Represented well. Wet brine is your prediction for what's going to be the best, right?
It's going to be hard to be juicier than that. So.
Yeah, that's going to be difficult. God, look how much juice is running out of this, though. It might be juicier. All right, let me cut a piece of breast meat. All right, dude, this is juicy AF. Like, look at that. But the skin, again, it doesn't feel crispy. All right, you want to taste the skin first? There's for you. There's for me. I don't taste a difference. Do you taste a difference?
No, honestly, it might have lost a little bit of the seasoning.
So you think maybe the skin tasted better?
Yeah.
All right. Here's some, oh jeez, look at this. Look at that. All right, there's a piece for you. Trying not to drop this one.
I like that better. It is juicier.
It is juicier, and I think it's got more flavor.
I agree, but I like the flavor of the skin better on the dry brine.
So if there's no difference in the skin, I think the most delicious chicken is the wet brine either way.
I think you got to go with wet brine.
All right, we got an answer. To dry brine or to wet brine is the answer. Hey, if you like this experiment, Check this one out next. I think you're really gonna like it, and I'll see you next time on Eat More Vegans.